Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. I'm Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanak of the City of Burlington. We're holding a press conference today to actually announce something quite remarkable and exciting. Last night at the Burlington City Council meeting, we had unanimous approval of 3 critical bonds for the City of Burlington. That included our water and lake bonds, as well as our general obligation capital bond, also called the GO bond. I really want to start with a lot of gratitude and thanks to the city councilors for working so hard with us to ask several deep questions around what the need, as well as how we are going to plan to finance this to make sure that it is affordable for ratepayers and property taxpayers here in the City of Burlington. I also really want to commend many, if not all, the people behind me, as well as many more who work within the city staff who spend endless hours not only building the information needed to present these bonds to the public, but also engaging those city councilors in hours of dialogue and communication. You probably have seen many of these folks behind me at neighborhood planning assemblies, community events. We had a town hall in early January, doing our due diligence to make sure that critical, easy to understand information is getting out to voters as they consider now these bonds that will be placed on the town meeting day ballot. These conversations have been really critical because we've, along the way, have incorporated critical feedback to make sure we're right-sizing the bonds to not only be responsible around our fiscal needs, the sounds of a garage, around the fiscal needs of our city, critical infrastructure, but also making sure we're being good stewards and keeping affordability front of mind. These bonds reflect the city's commitment to making generational investments in Burlington's future. And while we will also be mindful of the impacts on ratepayers and taxpayers, as I mentioned before, this is about what comes next for Burlington, critical investments to make sure our city continues to thrive. The language was approved by City Council last night will now go to Town Meeting Day, which is Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. I'm particularly proud of these bonds because they help us advance the 3 major priorities for this city. That includes community safety, ample and affordable housing, and making sure we're doing our part on climate work. And so for me, the people behind us will speak more to the themes that really advance those priorities, again, around community safety, housing, and climate, with that commitment to not only affordability, but making sure we're making equity-based decisions on how we spend this money to advance our critical infrastructure. A couple key points on just Town Meeting Day. I want to make sure people remember that registered voters in the City of Burlington will automatically receive their ballots in the mail during the week of February 10th. We also plan to include some public information on the content of the ballot. Just last night, we also partnered with our Burlington School District and will include information that even voters can access regarding the school budget itself, but also these 3 particular bonds and several other charter changes that we have on this ballot. People can fill out their ballots when they receive them, either return them to City Hall or in one of the many secure drop boxes that we have for ballots around the city. And you can receive more information on that on this great button on the front page of the city website that will give you all of the election information. You can also go to the polls. It's a great, wonderful tradition here in Vermont on Town Meeting Day to vote in person on March 4th. And you can find the locations of those voting locations on our website as well. I want to remind folks that you can register online to vote in Vermont at mvp.vermont.gov or by contacting the Clerk Treasurer's office at City Hall, or even registering on the same day of the election, which again is March 4th. Finally, all residents get to vote here in the City of Burlington, a proud fact here in our city. You do not need to be a U.S. citizen to vote on local elections here in Burlington. And as long as you're a full-time resident of Burlington who legally resides here, you can vote, and we want to hear your voice. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker, Megan Moir, who's the Division Director of our Water Resources Division of the Department of Public Works.
Hi, my name is Megan Moir. I'm the Division Director for Water Resources. Thank you to the Mayor team for organizing this press conference, and to all my team members, raise your hands, Water Resources team, who are standing beside me. They all work day in and day out to keep these age systems running, and they and I are very excited about the potential for these investments. Last night, Water Resources staff were very pleased to receive the support of the full council for DPW's request to place 2 important bond items on the March 4th annual meeting ballot. A request to bond for up to $20 million for the drinking water systems and up to $152 million for the wastewater and stormwater systems. At its foundation, the current proposal includes key resiliency projects to replace critical aged infrastructure in our significant wastewater, drinking water, and stormwater systems to ensure that these systems can continue to function without issue 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. On the drinking water investment side, the majority of the $20 million water bond work is focused on shoring up the city's drinking water reservoir storage facility and pump station, which serves the upper elevations of the city, including the University of Vermont Medical Center, the region's only level 1 trauma center. In addition to fundamental resiliency improvements, the lake bond for wastewater and stormwater includes elements designed to increase capacity at our largest wastewater treatment plant so that we can welcome the housing projects and their toilets that the state and Burlington know are so important to our mutual success. As water quality professionals, we are also very excited that the lake bond provides important funding for the installation of an even higher level of phosphorus removal at our largest plant, even more than we already achieve. This will be through the installation of tertiary treatment, which is a filter that strips out the last feasible bits of this nutrient from our wastewater effluent. As many people may know, excess phosphorus is one of the primary contributors to the cyanobacteria blooms that Vermont has been witnessing in the recent years. And while indeed there is so much more that has to be done elsewhere in the Lake Champlain watershed to turn down the faucet of this nutrient, this project will ensure that Burlington has done its part for the economic driver that is our beautiful lake. There are also funds to continue our decades-long efforts to reduce the impacts of combined sewer overflows, which can discharge unwanted bacteria during the extreme rainfall events that we are seeing more and more often due to climate change. The Water Resources Division has worked very closely with the council and other stakeholders to right-size the current proposal, focusing only on the first stage of work in what will ultimately be a multi-year plan, and committing to a series of regular check-ins and an additional third-party review during final design to make sure that we fine-tune the project well in advance of bidding for construction. Even so, we know that the potential rate impacts of this project are going to be a challenge for many of our ratepayers, and we are fully committed to enhancing our existing initial affordability program that was passed in 2022 to ensure that ratepayers are able to pay their water resources bills without having to compromise on meeting their other essential needs. We look forward to the continued engagement of the council, DPW Commission, and other city stakeholders and ratepayers as we move forward on this journey of needed investment into Burlington's water resources infrastructure. Thank you.
I don't know why I needed this piece of paper. Next up, we're going to hear from Ashley Parker, our Director of Capital Programs at the Clerk Treasurer's Office.
Thank you. The Clerk Treasurer's Office is really excited with the Council's unanimous decision to move forward with the $20 million general obligation bond for Town Meeting Day 2025. This is a really important bond for the city's general fund capital program, as it is one of the only revenue sources that this program has to implement well-needed projects that need improvements past their service life, deferred maintenance. It's based on our 5-year capital plan across all of our general fund capital assets. Our general fund capital program focuses on a variety of different types of assets. It includes our fleet, which is our vehicle and equipment. It includes streets and sidewalks, our transportation safety system, our public buildings like this one, and our parks. So this money is going to support a lot of great need, critical need across all of these general asset classes. We have about $3 million worth of need to replace vehicles in our fleet that are either at or past their service life. So around me you'll see some fire trucks, ambulances, snow plows, sidewalk tractors, our police cruisers. These are all things that we need to be able to continue to provide services to residents in the city. We've had to defer purchase of these vehicles for the last 2 fiscal years. So this bond is hugely important in helping us make sure that we can replace many of these important fleet assets. In addition, we're hoping to put about 50% at least of this bond money towards the replacement of existing sidewalk infrastructure and paving of existing street infrastructure. I think everybody knows we have some overdue maintenance in many of our streets and sidewalks, and this money will go a long way in helping us make sure that we can make sure that our streets and our sidewalks are accessible and connecting people to where they need to go in our city. And so this is a huge part of making this possible for us. It is costing us about $3 million a year to pave 3 miles of sidewalks and about $4.8 million a year to pave 4 miles of street network. And then lastly, one of the biggest components of this bond is to support our great need in replacing the Winooski Bridge. It is a huge infrastructure asset for not just the city of Burlington, but also the city of Winooski and our region as a whole. It's a major thoroughfare and connecting point. The bridge is in dire need of replacement, and this bond would put about 20%, about $4 million, towards the local match that we need to provide to make sure that this project happens and moves forward. This bond, we are really working hard to make sure that it is affordable and equitable for all of the taxpayers in the city. We have a really, really neat capital planning map that is live on the city's website, on our BTV Thrives website, that I encourage all residents to check out. You can zoom into your neighborhood and see what capital projects we know about and are focused on trying to implement over the next 5 to 6 years. We want residents to take a survey to provide input and help us prioritize these needs so that we can add a layer of data to help us continue refining this list and making sure that we are prioritizing the projects that are the utmost importance across our city. I'm really excited about this bond opportunity, and I really encourage folks to check out our map and reach out to me or others with any questions about the capital plan and or any assets that we hope to fund with the receipt of this money. So thank you so much for your support.
And next up, we'll hear from our fire chief, Chief Michael LaChance.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike LaChance, the Burlington Fire Chief, and I'm going to speak to you a little bit today about our fleet need. So we do appreciate very much the support we've received from the City of Burlington for the fire department fleet especially, but one thing that's concerning is how long it takes to get trucks these days, both for emergency services and general services like plowing, which I would also consider during a snowstorm an emergency service. It takes years to get one of these trucks, to receive one of these trucks once ordered. So we need to be proactive in ordering them and getting them coming. We also want to be able to pay for them when we order them so that we're not scrambling for the finances afterwards. And we can also glean any of those savings from prepayment of vehicles. It's just much more fiscally responsible than waiting. Also, vehicles are getting more and more expensive. Every month that goes by in this economy, vehicles are getting more and more expensive. So the sooner that we can move forward on the ordering and acquiring of these vehicles, the better. Fire trucks are 3 years to come. So if we wait to order them till we need them, we're going to be 3 years behind, and it's going to be very difficult to afford to keep them on the road. We are working very hard maintenance-wise. We appreciate our staff here at the Department of Public Works for working diligently to keep our vehicles on the road. But as you look around this shop, you can see that they have their hands full. We have a police car in here with getting some work done. We have a fire truck. We have an ambulance. Keeping up on regular maintenance is hard. Say nothing about emergency maintenance due to an aging fleet. So we really appreciate the support from the city, and this bond is key to keeping a successful fleet and successful infrastructure in the city. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from the Council President, Ben Travers.
Thank you, Mayor. Ben Travers, Ward 5 City Councilor, City Council President. I appreciate Director Spencer, Director Moir, CAO Shad, other city staff inviting me here today. Over the past half year, I would say, the city staff has demonstrated the critical need for the projects that could be supported by the bonds that will be on the ballot. The amazing city staff behind me, our firefighters and other city employees, our lake, our families and community that enjoy it, deserve the opportunity to vote on resources that are going to meet these critical needs. The City Council last night, understanding the need for these improvements in our community, unanimously gave the support for voters to consider these measures in March. We will look forward to continuing the conversation in partnership with the Mayor's administration prior to Town Meeting Day to answer voters' questions, and from my own perspective, hopefully secure their support for these measures. I will say that as we've had conversations in the community, we understand, and I know the Mayor's administration understands it as well, ongoing concerns about affordability. I greatly appreciate over the last few months the work of Director Spencer, Director Moir, and her staff in particular to, as she mentioned, right-size the project in terms of the water bonds that we're putting on the ballot. I also appreciate the work of the Chief Administrative Officer and her staff to ensure that our bonding on the general obligation bond in particular will preserve Burlington's pristine credit rating status. Former Mayor Weinberger worked tirelessly to secure that credit rating for Burlington. And as we look to borrow additional monies, that credit rating is going to be essential to our ensuring affordability for Burlingtonians. And I really appreciate the work of the Mayor's administration to ensure that this bonding is going to secure that rating for the future. That said, we will look forward to the coming months. Again, Mayor, I appreciate our partnership and our ability to work together on this, and we'll hope that voters support these measures on Town Meeting Day. Thank you.
And with that, we'll take questions.
I just have a question about, there was a comment about delayed fleet maintenance or delays for 2 years. Was that budgetary constraints as things were?
So I'll let Ashley answer that. It's been prior to my administration with some of those decisions, but I'll let Ashley come in and clarify. Or Catherine, or we can do it together.
I think your question is related to the delay in the purchase of our fleet. So it has to do with build out times from the vendors that are making the fire trucks, the ambulances, whatever it is. There is that kind of 2 to 3 year delay. So we can place an order today for something that won't show up for a couple of years. So it's really extended the timeline for us receiving replacement vehicles, and that impacts our budgeting and planning process.
And has that changed kind of recently, that it's gotten longer and longer to get vehicles?
I would say that when I started this job, right before FY23, that the fleet team was just starting to see the impacts of like post-COVID, post-pandemic impacts to that industry. Yeah.
And I'll just add, and Catherine can set me right if I say this wrong, but for the prior 2 budget years, we did not invest money into purchasing more fleet. And so we have about a 30% backlog of making sure we keep up. And as Ashley and the chief were mentioning, there is a long timeline for when we can actually secure a vehicle. And so we're trying to play catch up, as well as making sure we have usable vehicles online for especially our first responders in particular. Not me, but Chapin can.
Yes, there's a very robust partnership between the state, our federal partners, and the city of Winooski to rebuild the critical Route 2, Route 7 connection between the city of Burlington and the city of Winooski. The bridge was built in 1928 after the flood of 1927. And thanks to our state and federal partners, we have a historic opportunity to get this work done with other support that the city would struggle to make on its own. And we are expecting, with that broad support with the city of Winooski and the state and federal partners, to have construction start in 2 to 3 years. And it will also include reconfiguration of the Winooski-Colchester-Barrett intersection on the south side of the bridge as well.
I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to come up to the microphones, since they love talking. Anything else?
Mayor, can you just talk about affordability? You already touched on it a little bit. How do you want voters to be involved?
Well, I want voters to really understand that affordability, when I say it's front of mind, it truly is front of mind. I've lived in Burlington for 20 years. I own a home and we pay property taxes, and we're right there with fellow property taxpayers in the city, and renters for that matter. 60% of folks who are residents of Burlington pay rent, and we all know, if you've been a renter before, that property taxes get passed through to what people are paying for rents. So affordability, we're just getting started with really making sure we double down and make sure our affordability programs are responsive to the times, understanding the high cost of living here, and the less than 1% vacancy rate creates so many pressures on what folks can afford. So right when we started in last April, we worked to make sure we delivered a budget that was balanced in terms of how we raise revenue. I wanted to make sure it was not just on the backs of residents to pay more property taxes to generate the revenue. We needed to balance that budget and present a unified, because the council unanimously supported that budget, a budget that fits all the needs of the city's services. This year, we are also worked diligently early on the next fiscal year's budget to see if we needed to increase the general tax rate. We were really, I'm very, very pleased to say we did not need a general rate tax increase, and that's due to the hard work of the clerk treasurer's office and every single department. I asked folks to dig deep way earlier in the process than normal to make sure we were doing a program inventory of our critical city services, really thinking about what we absolutely need and what we don't need, so we can make sure that we kept a minimal tax rate that was only related to the splinter taxes that are related to required charter increases for debt and retirement for our city employees. So one of the other pieces starting this week is our tax fairness working group will convene. That group is charged with digging deeper into the municipal side of the property tax bill to see what other policies, solutions we can come up with, because we need to look forward and look at deeper policies around people's ability to pay. Some people might have property that is highly valued but less ability to pay income-wise. I think of seniors, for example, on fixed incomes. I think of low-income people who might have a home but struggle to keep up with property taxes. We can't do this in one-year cycles continually, so we have to think about structural reform to see how we can mimic some of the lessons that we can see the state has done related to property taxes on the state level for education funding that is income sensitized, using a formula that makes sense, knowing that Vermont in general has a cost of living challenge. Can you come a little closer to say that a little louder? There's like lovely background music. Yeah.
So you raised concerns about removing the officer cap. Do you feel that implementing the cap in the first place deterred potential recruits from going to the maketv?
In 2020, when the cap, I was not on city council nor was the mayor, but in 2020, a bipartisan support and a large majority of city councilors wanted to establish a cap because there was a call for understanding how we need to think about community safety differently. It was a call to reinvest resources to make sure we had adequate response that was nuanced in the city, including bringing on what we now call community safety liaisons, which is a social worker type program, our community safety officers, and really diversifying how we do community safety. And another really critical part of that decision in 2020 was around racial justice and understanding racial disparities around policing that was happening around the country, but also making sure we do our part to understand how disparities show up in our community. And we have data that we've been diligently looking at to see how do we change policies, trainings, and police oversight to make sure we're doing our part here in the city. Because not everyone feels safe with police, and there's disparate impacts on people of color in our community and otherwise. And so last night I raised concerns about lifting the cap because primarily we're nowhere near the number of officers that we've even budgeted for this fiscal year. And so lifting the cap, as I said last night, is a premature policy decision when we are not able yet to even staff up the police department. There are other rebuilding strategies we are actively working on already around making sure we do short-term improvements to the Burlington Police Department building, which are critical for safety and working conditions, working with the BPOA to start a robust bargaining process, which starts this month, in terms of bargaining their next collective bargaining agreement, and building the trust between this administration and the BPOA and all the professional staff at the Burlington Police Department to make sure they feel heard by leadership, to make sure they feel supported by their own local leadership in the police department. And those are things that are informing the police chief process. We're going to make sure we have a good, strong partner in our next police chief who understands how to look internally with rebuilding our department.
Maybe touch on this a little bit, but what specific information have you asked the department to provide before raising the cap on officers that have?
So as a couple of city council meetings ago, Chief Murad presented a recruitment report on what we were doing or not doing. I worked really diligently. I attempted to work really diligently with the chief to dig deeper, to make sure we were doing a true assessment of what we were doing right and what we were not doing so well, so we could really learn and do that self-assessment. As I communicated with that report and directly to the chief, long before we brought it to council and public, I did not think that his work achieved that true assessment. And so I will be looking to a third party, perhaps the firm that we hire for the police chief search process, to do that assessment. We owe it to taxpayers, we owe it to the rank and file of BPD to be truly honest around what we're doing that's not working. Truly, we have not been able to retain critical and hardworking folks. We need to do more on recruitment, and I really think we need to look at peer cities who have similar dynamics to understand what new strategies people are putting on the table that are also within our economic means as a city. The Burlington Police Department is almost 40% of our general fund budget, and so we have to hold both responsible decision-making around policy changes we make for recruitment, as well as staying within our means as a city. Back to the affordability question, we have to make sure we're right-sizing our approach and getting good results.
And last one I have, why don't you feel sure yet that raising the number of sworn officers is in Burlington's best interest?
Why do I not feel sure yet? Because there's not evidence and data have not been presented to me, including in the chief's report. And this is where I respectfully disagree with the councilors who supported the resolution last night. I did not see evidence that lifts that. I hear some feedback, but there's a long list of feedback on what it will take to rebuild the department from rank and file. And I said this last night, I do not want to overpromise something that we can offer police officers right now. We are working diligently to hire 10 more police officers, and that was based on police department leaders' information and assessment back in April and May of last year for this year's budget. And until we can meet those benchmarks, I don't feel it's responsible to lift a cap that overpromises that we can suddenly hire more police officers than we really can.
Thank you.
Okay? Any other topic?
Can we maybe talk about the deferred other items that were in the drinking water and water bonds that might be coming up in the near future?
Thanks for the question. Yes, I alluded to the fact that this is sort of stage one of a multi-year plan. We have a post over there. The strategic decision that was made, nothing has officially been taken out of the long-term plan. It's really about the timing of the bonds. And so as soon as 2027, voters could expect that we would be returning to request additional bonds to be put on a ballot at that time to cover the balance of the wastewater work, which includes specifically the consolidation of East Plant to our largest main plant. So that would be turning the small wastewater treatment plant that's on Riverside into a pump station and pumping that wastewater all the way over to this new expanded wastewater treatment plant on the waterfront. And then the other piece is doing the high priority resiliency improvements at North Plant, which is the small plant at the end of North Avenue. We've also alluded to the fact that on the drinking water side, this drinking water bond is smaller than the wastewater bond. And that's because it is a early bite on what we know will be a bigger suite of improvements that we need to make, particularly for the drinking water treatment plant. Burlington has one drinking water treatment plant on their waterfront just north of the Coast Guard station. It was built in 1984, and we are about to undertake a comprehensive assessment of what that system needs. And that also could likely be an investment that you might see in 2027 that we would be needing to explore. Does that answer your question? Okay.
You ready for B-roll with the cool trucks that we're surrounded by? Anything else? Thank you for laughing at my jokes, whoever laughed it back there. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Truly, you could take some B-roll. Go for it. Yeah.